Hey, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. I'm really glad you're here. We're gonna spend a day in the shop fixing some cars. Of course, I gotta finish opening up the shop. You guys that have been around a while, you know, you can't work in the shop and spend a day in the shop if the shop's not open. So first things first, we'll go around here. We got a few cords to plug in, a few lights to switch on. Got to get the mace in the wheel, some food so they'll spin the wheel and keep the generators on. We left off yesterday on this Monte Carlo behind me. I got to finish the fuel line on that. I'm not sure if he's going to do any other things, but there's a bunch of stuff on that car if you watched yesterday's video. Good morning, sunshine. You might be watching this video morning, noon, evening, but for me, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning, a little after. And it's going to be a beautiful day, hot, muggy, then it's going to rain and cool things off. Typical Florida summer day. Let's put some clips in right here so you'll know what you'll see in this video today. This Monte Carlo Honda Accord Accord ECM. Fix that. So I'm going to finish opening this place up, pull my project truck around so it's out of everyone's way, and we'll do what we can to learn a thing or two and have some fun. That's what we do around here if you're new. Stay tuned. Alright. First thing this morning, we're going to finish this fuel line on this Monte Carlo. And this is what I'm coming up with here. The best. I tried to go over that spring pocket for a little while last night, and it was just really, there's not enough room. You really have to lift the body off the frame, and like I said, we're not doing that. So, what I've come up with is to go from this pipe here up to the top of that frame rail in front of it, so it's far away from the exhaust, and then come down onto the floor and through this hole, which you can see has a curved stamping, so it won't be harsh on that tubing if it touches it or something. Of course, we'll do our best to insulate it, maybe put a piece of rubber around it, and then after that I can go up and over and come back down to this fuel line here. That's the plan. And I'll make the piece of copper tubing about a foot longer than this, and I should be able to bend the rest after it's in place, I think. Alright, got my union, got my tubing bent. The last hurdle is I could not get the extra length through the hole and along the frame. There's just too much here. So I had to cut it, and we're going to put a piece on, just like we did over here, for the last piece. And then, right now this is what's keeping the gas from coming out. I'm going to put a piece of my braided hose on this last piece as well. But I'm going to attach everything first and try to pop that off and pop it on. Also loosen the gas cap, make sure it's not under any pressure. And we should be good for that part. Now I can make this one separately. And I think we'll be in good shape after that. This braided hose is a really tight fit. I mean, almost to the point where you can do it without clamps, but of course we're not gonna. This is my plan here. Should be nice. Alright, I pulled that off and the piece of hose, and it only dripped a minute. So now, get this little clamp on there. We have got us a fuel line that isn't collapsed. Alright, now that's tight. I'm not going to bother taking the evap tubes out of there and stuff. I've got to double check all my clamps, make sure this isn't touching anywhere bad. think we are good. This is up out of the way, so that trailing arm, when it's fully down, it's going to hit this before it hits this. So that's all clear. Always got to check any custom hot rod type stuff. You know, you always got to make sure something's not going to move and come in contact with what you just did. This could be a lot prettier, obviously, but we're on a budget. 3 hours is what I'm getting paid, and I'm at 3 hours now. And I still got to run it and drive it and make sure everything's working good. I know this converter's connected now. So yesterday I put the torque converter to flywheel bolts in. I found some bolts for this shield. Everything else looks good, except for these LEDs. I'm gonna strap these LEDs back up where they were, so they don't get damaged. And then we'll start this thing up. All right. Looks like these are a little loose. It's got some oil leaks here. These normally don't leak out of here. Sometimes when you disturb the gasket, you have to replace it. Tighten the bolt about a half a turn. Yep. Those connectors should never be open. Engine compartments need to be weather packed. At least put silicone in the end of the butt connector if that's all you got. Anyway, let's see. Got to fill the carburetor. The belt is squealing like and they're squawking. See the power steering pump? How crooked it is? That's probably why it's making noise. Something's not lined up correctly. He's not here for that. I did turn the idle up just a half a turn or so. It was idle on like 580. Now it's probably around 680. Didn't stay running at all before. When? Not gonna be perfect, but we'll get it better. Pretty good. Yeah. You gotta move the crab bar.
Yeah, because now it's not even coming back out. Weird.
Both of the bolts are loose.
Weird.
Whoever put his kink plastic fuel lines in and tightened his torque converter bolts also put the power steering pump on. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better. At least it won't come flying off right after I just worked on it, and they'll be like, "That just happened. You worked on it last." That's just one of the another joys of working on hot rods. I'm gonna take this thing for a drive, and not far, just around the parking lot, because it came in not staying running and not going. So let's do that. I'll take you guys with me. What do you think? The paint's pretty nice. The bodywork's a little sketch. But I mean, it's still a cool car. If I was mine, I would do a few things. Like replace this rubber weather strip that has the paint on the edge and stuff. But it's a cool car. I'm not going to tear it down at all. I'd probably redo this console a little bit so this isn't flopping around at all. I'd rather put the radio here and put these window switches down there. That's just me. Let's see if it goes. No more belt squeak, but all of that stuff I just did was already a no charge situation. I just wanted to help them out. It moves. The brakes work. The idle's still a little low. I might have to pick it up some more. He didn't ask about it. You know what I could do? Do it the right way and say, would you like us to adjust your carburetor? And we can set his idle mixtures, see if we can get his choke working. Man, the gas pedal is stiff too. What was that? I don't want to do too much puddle jumping. We got a lot of puddles. Well, it runs and drives. Man, it's got to be laying on these airbags sideways. I'm going to put it on the alignment rack. Last thing I'm going to do and make sure those airbags are straight up in the spring pockets like they're supposed to be. Anytime you lift something like this that's been bagged and not done right, the bags fall out and stuff. I mean, to me, all they had to do is fabricate something that would, like a stud on a bracket, and bolt the airbag to it. Then you could remove that nut if you wanted to take the airbags out again. But it takes a little more time to do that, so it generally gets skipped. It feels like there's no rear suspension, like the airbags are sideways, even though I tried to line them back up. All right, let's get that done and we'll see what's next. I think the ECM's here for that van from last week. Well, yeah, the bags are kind of where I put them. Not 100% perfect. See, if this bolt here was here with a big washer or something, it would help keep them straight and stuff. But anyway, now I'm guessing it's something to do with his compressor, something like that. But all right, let's see if he wants to mess with any more on this thing. It's done as far as I know. 2012 Honda Accord. No start, check brakes. Let's see what we got. 92,643 miles already broken. Oh, Honda, you're never supposed to brake. What are you doing? Don't you know the routine? You and Toyota, you're slipping. Let's get under the hood. It's probably got a bad starter, pretty common on these. Power windows work, so not a dead battery. Luckily, I brought my voltmeter because Rob said, I looked at the brakes, they're grinding in the back, and it definitely doesn't crank. So, let's get under the hood. Oh, you want a love rating? All right. No food. I'm gonna say 4. I mean, there's a lot of clutter, a lot going on. My brain's a little frazzled by it, but once I don't see bags of food, it's got to be at least a 3 or 4. See what kind of battery voltage we have, just in case the power windows work on 4 volts. 12.48. All right. Now I get down to that rascally starter. I think it's under the intake on these. We're going to take a look and see if the key is energizing the starter. We can also go to the starter relay and see if we feel that starter relay click, or if we get power to energize the relay. Then we have a really good idea it's the starter if we can't get to it. Let's whack it with the pry bar. And you guys listen, see if you can hear it click, see if it cranks, and you let me know. Did you hear it click? It sounded like it was clicking to me, but I was farther away than you, so I appreciate the input. This thing needs a starter. To put the voltmeter on the starter, you got to take the intake off just to test it. And 19 out of 20 times, that's what it is. There is a starter cut relay. Could cause a problem. Park neutral switch, very, very, very minor possibility. But when you hear the starter clicking, you know it's at least trying down there, unless it has a bad battery cable connection. If that is the case, once the intake's off, we'll spot that pretty easy, and then I'll change it to cleaning the starter cable. It'll be the same labor, but let's let them know. Rob's already put the estimate together. It's got dry rotted tires and metal to metal brakes. The starter's number 1 and the metal brakes number 2. And if you actually want to go on the highway, I would definitely not have dry rotted tires. But we got a Toyota ECM. Some kind of a programming dongle that you plug in and leave the key on for 30 minutes. Cluster lights will blink, blah blah blah. After 30 minutes, switch the ignition off, remove this resync tool, cycle ignition 5 times, start the vehicle to ensure ECM resync was successful. So I'm going to put that in the Toyota Sienna. I also got the they brought the Tacoma back. They said, man, it doesn't crank sometimes still. I'm like, well, we didn't fix that. So he said, well, I want to fix that too. So we're going to do that. After we put the ECM in, I got the charger on that. So far it's been cranking for me though. I've got a wiring diagram here. There's a start 7.5 amp start fuse left of the steering column, which is right here. This bottom one, there's two 7.5s. The bottom one is the start fuse. So what I'm going to look for is, if when it does it, or the customer did also put a new ignition switch in again. When it does it, if I have power here, it comes from the ignition switch at the top to that 7.5 amp fuse. So if that's good, if the ignition switch is good, I'll have 7.5 when it's not cranking. Then I'll have to go down to the Prindle, shown right here. So the power comes out, the Prindle interrupts it if it's not in park or neutral. If it is in park or neutral, it lets power go out and down to the starter relay. So the starter relay, if you remember this truck from a couple weeks ago, the starter relay was not getting energized. So something between the ignition switch and the starter relay wasn't happy. Since they put ignition switch in, and it's still doing it, they said, if I have power here, that switch is good. If I don't have power here, it's bad. So if I have power here, I'll go down to the Prindle and verify it's okay. There's a small chance that this JB3 connector, it's like basically a little splice pack, sends power in the same wires out to other things. That's possible, but very, very rare. It's probably going to be in the Prindle, or the ignition switch could even be defective, but I doubt it. He's put two in now and it still does it. So all I'm doing is, I'll show you what it looks like when it's working. Getting my 7.5. See the test light lit. So if this test light lights, I know the switch is working and something after it is not working, and then we'll go down to the Prindle if I get it to do it. I've started about 12-15 times and it starts every time so far. If you remember that the one day a couple weeks ago, we had to push it in the shop, it would never crank, and then I started jumping out the starter relay to get it to crank. So I know it's not the starter or the starter relay. So let's go ahead and pop that ECM in while this sits, and we'll try to get both of them to act up. We got broken Toyotas and Hondas all over the place today. Not sure what's going on. Now this little girl is, there's 4 Phillips screws down there to hold the bracket and the ECM together, but you can't get to them. Well, maybe 5. This one might have 3 in the back. You can't get to them with the airbox in the way. So you say, well, just take the bracket off with the ECM. Well, the airbox holds the bracket down too. So, Toyota, they don't know what they're doing. We'll just get all this stuff out of the way, and then I could probably just pull the Phillips screws out and lift that thing out of there. There's some vacuum hoses and stuff. You gotta pull it out of your way. Electrical connectors and stuff. What happened there? Heard something hit the ground. What was it? I don't know. I got all my bolts. Anyway, someone had glued these into the housing for some reason. I don't think that's a factory thing. I've never seen it before. I'm gonna keep taking some stuff out of the way until I can see those Phillips screws. Holy moly, broski. What are you doing? Toyota doesn't like their connectors to come apart either. Sometimes they make you force them together until it breaks. So I'm gonna get a pick and try to pull the latch up. Turkeys. Getting close now. It's quite a chore to get this airbox out. You almost have to take the battery and the wiper cowl out to do it. It's gonna snowball. Next thing you know, it's chassis off restoration, or body off restoration. Next thing you know. My gracious goodness, man. That is quite a chore. Now it's easy to get at. It's a big deal, crab baby. I got the JIS screwdriver, see if they're how tight these are. They might be crazy tight, I don't know. Nope. If they're all like that, we'll be good to go. Anyone who's a new viewer and you haven't seen these yet, These JIS screwdrivers, see the teeth on them? Japanese industry standard. I use Vessel. There's a lot of other brands of them, but a regular Phillips and a JIS are not the same. These will work in Phillips great, but the Phillips screws, Phillips screwdriver and a Phillips screw, they try to lift out as you turn them when they're this tight. But with this JIS tool, it kind of bites as you turn it. So you're a lot less likely to need an impact driver or any of that stuff. Highly recommend them if you work on a lot of Japanese vehicles. And like I said too, they'll also work on regular Phillips screws even better than a regular Phillips screwdriver. Ta-da! I'm gonna get these buttoned up. We will get this air box. I'm gonna just put it all back together, I'm guessing. Can't start it without the mass air and stuff connected anyway. So we'll go ahead and put this all back together. Like the labor guide says, installation is reversal of removal. Then we're going to hook that little dongle tool in there, get the battery back in and all. Turn the ignition key on with the charger on it and leave it for 30 minutes. And then it should fire right up. Fire right up. There is a little white mark on the rubber hose wherever a bracket goes, and whenever it pushes in somewhere, there'll be a little white mark. Super handy dandy. Got to tighten up these 10mm clamps. That knocks off of there pretty easy, but should be good. Alright, battery charger's on. Everything's hooked up. Give it a once over. Make sure I didn't miss any clamps or anything silly. Everything looks pretty good. Plug this dongle in, turn the key on for 30 minutes. They said the cluster should dance if everyone's happy. Dancing cluster. If you guys don't remember, this Toyota Sienna van came in as a no start. It almost acted like it was out of fuel. It would crank and shut off, and if you let it sit a long period of time, it would run a few seconds and shut off. If you let it sit overnight, it would run 10 seconds and shut off. The one time I let it sit with the battery off overnight, it ran about 2 minutes. That was the longest it ever ran. So it was the can line on the low side would be corrupted. If you look at a cam pattern, there's a up and a down, high and low, and they should mirror each other perfectly. And once I found that the problem was on the low side, I showed you guys in the video a couple weeks ago, I think it was a week and a half ago, that the low side can, instead of being nice perfect square waves, you keep the pattern tight so you can see a lot of information. Instead of being a nice normal pattern that's consistent, there'd be spikes and drops and glitches and angles, and that means the can's basically just going no, I'm not doing it again. So we figured out that all the powers and grounds were good, all the other computers were happy. We weren't getting, when it would happen, the TCM and ECM would stop communicating, and we realized looking at the can wiring that TCM comes through the ECM, so if the ECM goes offline, so does the TCM, and the vehicle's not going anywhere without those two talking. So this new ECM should fix it. You're never 100% sure until you know, until you've done it, and you try to complete the repair and see what happens. So this is a reman ECM. Remanufactured usually means they figure out what's wrong with it, fix that, paint it a little bit, and send it to you. But we've used a few from this company before, and I think we've only had a problem with 1 or 2 out of 20. So we got pretty decent results. I know one thing, you know, right about the dash lights blinking like crazy and let you know something's happening. So we got about 28 more minutes for this to sit and dance. Then you turn the key off and on 5 times in a row. Then it should start and be done. Supposedly it's all ready to go, VIN and everything's in it. We will find out in about 30 minutes. It has been 30 minutes. So now we go off, on, off, on, off 3, off 4, off 5, off. Check engine light blinking. That's kind of strange. It's running great. The check engine light's blinking. Alright, well it runs. Let me get my scanner on it. Oh, it's out now. Yay! This one's running. All I gotta do now, shut that hood, take it for a little drive, make sure it stays running. And if you don't see it again, that means it's fixed. And I think I got a Nissan Murano that doesn't crank. Customer thinks it needs an alternator. We're gonna take a look at that one next, I believe. I believe this is about a 2012 Nissan Murano. Customer just bought it. It's got a paper tag on the back. 2010 Nissan Murano, like I said. I fired it up and it fired up. I hooked the scanner up. I was going to see if the push button switch was doing its job, if the inhibit relay was possibly keeping it from starting or something like that, and it started up. So I drove it up. Let's get a little AC going, man. It is muggy today. It's only about 92 or so, which is warm, but the 4,000% humidity makes it feel like, I don't know, 160, 180 degrees, somewhere in there. Saw it on the news. I gotta get this thing to not start for me, but what I'll do while it's running is bring up some engine data. And oh, there it is right there. It's charging 14.2. So I know it's doing something. The alternator's not too mad. The customers seem to think it was an alternator, but apparently it's not. Because after hooking the scanner up, trying to get everything to communicate, I pushed the button and started. I'm leaning more towards some kind of a starter issue, theft deterrent thing. Sometimes the key fob batteries get weak and they'll get mad about that. So I'll play with it a little while, try to get it to act up. I'll give it a 4 reluctantly. I'm tempted towards a 3, but we're gonna go 4. That's just water. Don't worry too much about it. See what happens. I'm also still trying to get that Tacoma to act up and not crank for me. Keep starting. And the Sienna runs great. The AC doesn't work though, so I have to ask them about that. The problem is that kind of thing, usually if you say, did your AC work before it? 6 out of 10 people will say, yeah. The other 4 go, no, it didn't. Can you take a look at that too while you have it? So you don't know what you're going to get till you ask. What I can do, what I'll probably do on the Sienna is to put the AC machine on it really quick. If I find out it's low on Freon, I know that it didn't work before. And then we save everybody a lot of aggravation, right? And we'll come back to whichever one acts up first. That's the bottom line. We're dancing today, and I like dancing. Aha! I hear a starter out there. Hear that? Aha! That's pretty easy. Got bad starter. It gave me like 3 clicks. And then I said, they're going to want to come to the party too. Let's have them come along. And we can all dance together. Then it clicked. And then one time no click. And then the third time it started. So, unless it has a loose ground connection, I'll have to look at the main ground, main power leads, main battery cable, and all that kind of thing. And if those main cables are all good, this thing should be starting every time. Generally, if you have a bad connection, it's going to not fix itself like that and let it start. 99 out of 100 times, bad starter. So let's get under the hood. I'll take a quick look at some of those things and let them know it needs a starter, unless I find something. And then we'll come back to this one. Something happened. Something showed itself. Got a new battery in it. Everything's clean and tight. This is all tight. So it seems like someone's probably been messing with it and going through all those connections already to make sure it wasn't something simple, which is good. Saves me a little trouble. Whoa, we got a starter. Got quality Ultima starter for this thing. So we're gonna go ahead and knock that out. Really, it's funny, I was just at lunch and people having a field day on my oil change video. It says kilometers on the dash and miles on the sticker. Of course, I caught it after I made the video, but I thought it would be funny at that point, and it's working. Everyone's in there going, this is clickbait. Oh, it's good stuff. Hey, gotta have some fun with it. You gotta enjoy the dance. You gotta embrace the nonsense. Take this out, take the battery out. I believe it's under the battery tray. Maybe take the air filter box out if we have to. You can see everything's been cleaned real nice. They just bought this from a used car lot, I think. One more 10 and this air box is out. I think I can see a lot more once it's out of the way. I think I can see it right down there. I think you got to pull this module assembly out. One of the labor guides said 0.8 and one said 1.4. See what happens. One thing's for sure. Once the battery's out of here, we don't have to worry about disconnecting them electrical connectors and all. Get these battery hold downs out of the way. Three of those. Gotta pull this out of the way a little. I might be able to fit it out of there. I don't know. Am I asking too much? The dipstick's not going to help, but I think if I get that battery cable and this harness out of the way, I got to pinch those two little ears to get that to come out. Get this connector out of here. I might be able to sneak it out. I'm not sure. I might have to take that dipstick out. I don't know. It goes in the transmission housing pretty far, so I'm thinking that dipstick's going to be an issue. Holy moly, that's Honda type. What the heck? Got it. I think the bottom bolt I'm going to do from underneath, and the main battery cable I'm going to see if I can get from underneath as well. Probably got to take some splash trays out from underneath. Oh, starting to rain. Get your raincoats out. Now from underneath, there's a starter. I'm going to get this 12 and the other 14. We'll see what we can squeeze it out at. The rain is a-coming down. All the luxury cars out here are getting wet. Got broken down Jaguar, classic Cadillac, broken down BMW, broken down classic Cadillac. What else we got? A Ford, a Chrysler, a Nissan, a Toyota, Ford, a Chrysler, and Nissan. Anyway, let's take you someplace safe where I can get that last two bolts out. Let's see here. Alright, wheel liner. It's enough out of you. I might need a longer extension. Now, since there's no battery, I don't have to worry about that part of it. Oh, it's raining sideways. I'm getting wet. If that's not long enough, I can do nothing for you. Let's do it. Under here. Luckily the wheel well's falling out of the car already. I didn't have to unbolt anything. Let's see here. Oh no! I'm on my third option for trying to squeeze it out of there without taking the dipstick out of the transmission. So I think I gotta take this little, I'm not sure if that's a filter, a cooler, or some type of a valve, like a drain back valve, but 3/12s, and I can get the last 1/16 of an inch I need to get it out. It's easy. It almost fell and hit me in the head, just to teach me a lesson. It's a little Nissan girl. Isn't she cute? There's 3 different ways I've tried to get it out, and every single direction is about that much short. So, but heads up, take that little cooler dealio off the side and you're fine. Wherever that baffled. It's baffling, that's what it is. Nissan! Let's get these bolts back in, call this thing done. up, get one started. Alright, I'll show you. Just 1 second. Now, you guys know I like to start them all before I tighten any of them. This only has 2 starter bolts, but they're both threaded in real good now. Now I'll go ahead and tighten this one up. The top one I'll have to get from the top because I can't fit my big 3/8 ratchet down here. This is about 700 foot-pounds or so. Probably more like 32 or somewhere in there. I didn't look it up. I promise it won't fall off. Now they did have a cheap little 13 and a lock washer on there, but you guys know how I feel about that. What are the odds that they both hit that plastic container and bounce out? I'm gonna put this 12 on there and I'm gonna move on. That's what I'm doing. Alright, that's tight. I use the electric tool to spin it in, and then I use it like a regular hand ratchet afterwards so we don't snap nothing. I could plug this in either way, but might as well do it here. I still have to gotta put my baffle deal back up and my air scoop. It's got a cool air scoop to keep the CVT from melting down. I'm going to cut the factory torque spec of 700 foot-pounds down to about 12 foot-pounds, and I think it's not going to go anywhere. Even without Loctite, it's good to go. All I got left now is get that top bolt tight, put all my battery goodies back in, be like a brand new car. A bunch of push pins are missing, there's some plastic liners missing, but we'll see what we can come up with to make it flop around less going down the road. Yeah, that's pretty tight. That's a long ratchet, and I put about everything that ratchet could do on it. Feel really good about putting all these clips back in. You guys know you're supposed to do that, right? For those of you who watch my days in the shop, I'm going to see if this is an oil change sticker in it and change the cluster to kilometers. We're going to have some fun. Harness back in the clips. I got to do this 10. And we got a few more 10s. And then the battery can go. I wish that you could, I guess I could put the battery in temporarily to test it, but I trust the folks over there at Advanced Auto Parts. I think that's where Ultima stuff comes from. We actually have had pretty decent luck with them, all kidding aside. There's 2 push pins and 1 10 in this back corner for that air box. For inquiring minds, we are doing repair videos. That's pertinent information. It's nice out now that it rained. It's like 80 degrees now. Humidity actually went down. I'm guessing the raindrops were knocking all the moisture drops out of the air or something. I don't know. My scientists out there chime in and tell me how that works. It rains, it looks more humid and feels less humid. I can't explain. Enough horsing around. Get this hole down in. I'm gonna jump in there and see how this thing starts up in about 2 minutes. For you, it'll be like half a second. Uh-oh. Door handles are not too good. Oh yeah. This here, brand new car. I'm still struggling with the fact that someone bought it with 172,000 miles on it. Honestly, it's not a terrible thing if you get a really good deal. I mean, what do you guys think the car like this might be worth? It's got some damage in the dash and door panels, and every body panel has some scrapes and wounds on it. It needs a rack and pinion. The rack and pinion leaked so bad that the boots have swollen up and fell off. Made a short about it. It needs a lot of other things basically, and has a lot of miles. And you know, if you could buy a car like this for $2,000 or something, I guess, and run into the ground, when something big happens, you're done with it, right? That's not bad. I just hope they didn't pay $10,000 or $15,000 for a car like this, but not up to me. This thing's fixed. I'm gonna stop babbling and we're trying to get something else done today. We still got a little time left. It's just been one of those days. Lots of Nissans and Toyotas and Hondas today. This one also intermittently doesn't start. But I noticed something that makes me want to make a short. The oil change is 2,000 miles overdue. 94.5, 96.5. And it's not kilometers either, it's odometers. Mileages is... We're gonna have some fun with it, don't you worry. Intermittently, it doesn't crank. It's doing it right now. Ta-da! Let off. Oh, that time it cranked. So that's what it's doing. I'm going to see how difficult or easy it is to get to the starter. The way I prefer is to put a back probe into the starter activation wire, see if it's trying to get it to crank. If it is, then the ideal way is to put a load on the positive cable with a test light or something, preferably like a headlamp or something big like that. See if there's voltage drop on that starter wire under a load, that kind of thing. You could even just put your 12-volt meter on the main lead and crank it over. And if it's a connection issue, don't connect it to the cable. Connect it to the post on the starter. You connect your meter to that post. If the cable's got a bad connection, the voltage will go away when you try to crank it. So that's the way we prefer to do it. But we can also do things like tap it with a pry bar when it doesn't crank, you know, that kind of thing. We do what we gotta do. Depends on how easy it is to get at. You could even go to a starter relay and see if the starter relay is sending power out. Then you know it's either a broken wire or the starter's bad. So we're gonna try it a few times. I can also hook the scanner up and make sure it sees this button every time I push it. If it says crank and it's not cranking, then at least I know that button's working and it's not something weird with that. But I have honestly never seen one of these buttons go bad. A lot of people are scared of them. They say, oh, the key's more reliable, but I've literally never replaced one of these buttons for going bad. All right, let's go under the hood, see where the starter's at, and give this thing a love rating of 3. Oh, one bag's open. It should be a 2, shouldn't it? You guys tell me. Driver's window also doesn't work. Uh-oh. It's a 2017, by the way, with 96,522 miles. I don't make the rules. These turkeys, oh, both the axles. Both axles are leaking grease. It's not the end of the world, but gonna make a mess and probably should be replaced. But with my car, I'd clean things up and rock them a while until they start doing something weird like vibrating or noise. Anywho, the starter is buried up there. It tells you to drain the radiator coolant and pull some hoses out of your way and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's like 2.5 hours labor. I mean, it looks like it's there, but I can't get to the control wires easily. Let me see if I can find a starter relay. Oh, you know what? This is a Nissan. I bet you it's got a fuse box that has a module in it, and the relay is probably part of the fuse box. Yay, Nissan. All right, so a little bit of a conundrum. We don't want to go left. We don't want to go right. We'll be right in the middle. We can't get to the starter to do a proper diagnosis of the engagement circuit. We can't pull a relay out because it's built into the IPDM to test to see if the relay is getting activated when it doesn't crank. And kind of leaves us in a tough spot because the IPDM could also be bad. That starter relay in the IPDM goes bad, it'll intermittently not send out enough current to activate the solenoid on the starter. It probably takes, you know, 3 amps, 4 amps to close the solenoid so it'll engage the starter. So if that relay contact in the IPDM is bad, you're talking about replacing the fuse panel. But we don't want to put a starter in it and then when we're done have it go click and not crank. So we're going to try to see if we can at least see that the button is working and everything inside, and that it's trying to get it to crank when it happens and doesn't follow its order. And at least I'll know everything in here is working, then I can narrow it down to the IPDM or starter from there. We may have to do a search and destroy mission. You guys know sometimes If you're going to do a repair, you're 90% sure it's a starter or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you got to dig in, start taking all kinds of things apart, and then you can do your test just before you replace it, while you're in there, because you got to access it to test it. Let's go ahead, get this thing loaded up, take a look at some data, and see what we have. Might as well go ahead and smart scan them. No ECM codes, interesting. BCM, uh-oh, it's angry. Well, the only codes I have are BCM and HVAC, and none of them are starter related. But the BCM works together with the IPDM to let the starter engage, so we'll bring up some data in the BCM. Alright, I've got permit engine start, ignition relay, ignition's on right now, so it's showing on. I've got push switch and push switch IPDM. Why there's two and the difference, I don't know. But I do know we're going to push the start button, see what happens. Hold the brake. It's seeing the switch pushed. Now did I do that? Okay, now it should be cranking. It's seeing that it's pushed, but it's not doing it. That time it did it. So the button's working. Even when it doesn't crank, it sees the button is pressed. So we know that everything in here is working. I think what I'm going to have to do on this is tell them it's 2.5 hours worth of work to get in there just to test the starter. And then you're in there, you can replace it while you're in there. It's kind of a shame, but one last thing I can do is I'm going to pull up a wiring diagram, and I'll see if I can find a connector somewhere. Maybe coming out of the IPDM to the starter, there's a connector. Could be 1 to, who knows, 16, 18 wires somewhere in the engine harness. If I can find the right wire color and the exact wire that goes to the starter solenoid, maybe I can test it that way. We'll try that first. This here contraption covers up this contraption. This is the wiring diagram. E10 is the connector that goes into this IPDM, but you got to take it all apart and lift it out, and it goes in the back of the IPDM. That way you can't get to it. That's the connector looks like. 6-pin. Number 3 is the red. E10, which is shown in the diagram here. E10 pin 3. Probably hard to see, but there is no connector. This connector down here is on the starter. There's no connector anywhere else. So I've replaced these IPDMs because the AC compressor that wouldn't turn on, because a wiper motor that wouldn't turn off, because horns that don't blow, cooling fans that don't work, and sometimes, very rare occasions, the starter that doesn't work. So let's open that thing up. Maybe we can get to something. Not feeling too optimistic at this point, but we're going to try. It's easier to get to the connectors with everything still plugged in than I thought it would be. Yay, Nissan. Good for them. One of those two red wires, this one or this one, is going to be the wire I need. No other connector has a red wire that size or smaller. I would expect them to be smaller, but they're also the only ones that are 6-pin connectors in there. So we'll try this one. Put the test light in the circuit as well to make sure if you get surface voltage on here, nothing's really happening. The test light will force it to be more accurate voltage. Try this and see if we can get it to act up and see if we can figure her out. Push a button. Oh, we're on the try it a few times. It's a bad sign that it's starting more often now that I flipped the IPDM over. It was only starting 1 out of 3 or 4 tries. Now it seems to be starting more often. That might be an indicator. Now the voltmeter will just move, because once the engine starts, it pulls that voltage away. So you see the voltmeter start jumping around and then go back to 0. Might have to crop that in a little bit. Uh-oh. I am pushing on the starter button right now, and nothing is coming out of the IPDM. Let's let up and hit it again. That's interesting. This thing might have the bad IPDM and not a starter. This will be the first one I did for a starter if that's the case. Nothing. Uh-oh. It's got more complicated now. I was hoping to see the light coming out of there when it wouldn't start. But I don't have a light. And the way Nissan does it... Alright, man. Settle down. The way Nissan does it, the BCM takes your starter button signal, comes up to the IPDM, activates the starter relay right here. When this has ground on one side, power on the other, it closes this contact, sends out the signal to the CPU and to the starter control relay, which the CPU then closes to get the power to come down that red wire that I just showed you. Intermittently, this red wire is not lighting up. So it probably has a bad IPDM. We've eliminated the starter now because when it doesn't start, it's not getting power. My next course of action is to find this wire, pin 30, see if that connector is on here. That is E10 is the pink wire, which is next to that red wire, which is in pin 3. This is pin 4. Remember, E10 has 3 and 4 in it, only 2 wires in that connector. So I need to find the wire from the BCM and make sure the BCM is sending a signal to the IPDM. Pin 30, purple wire, E13, I would think. Sometimes if they skip, then these 2 wires will be in the next connector, but I can't be sure. I might have to pull some more wiring diagrams and try to see here. Let's look for pin 30 in here, and I don't see it on this page. I didn't print all the pages. I was thinking this E10 was all I needed to see power coming out when the starter was bad. So it's a good thing we went further and we didn't just go, it needs a starter. Bottom line is, starter's good, button's good. Now we're headed towards either the IPDM or the BCM, or even maybe a wiring problem, which is pretty rare. Car's fairly new, unless it's been in an accident or something. I find that 95% of wiring problems are from poor repairs previously, from an accident, or someone just worked on it and damaged the wire in some way. So let me see if I can find this connector, and we can trace out that purple wire. If the signal from the BCM is going into the IPDM, then we know the IPDM is bad. Pin 30 is a purple wire, 2 over from the end corner on a 12-pin connector, 2 rows of 6. I think that white one is it. We're going to try it. I got my meter on. Turn the light out so it's easier to see the test light. And we'll go inside and see what we got. Of course, I also have to get it to do it. That's another deal. Well, that's interesting. I have a dim light. It's not cranking. Button is pressed. Let's try harder letting off. Oh, that might not be the right wire. It is dimly lit and it comes on with the ignition. Very interesting. PPL is purple, and I've tried all the purple wires in there, and with the engine starting, none of them are lighting up my meter or my test light. Something's going on. Well, we'll have to figure this out tomorrow. We'll play with it some more tomorrow. So for now, the shop's all closed up. Everyone's gone home a little while ago, so just you and me. We're going to button it up for today, and I'm going to thank you for watching. Hope you got something from it. Maybe enough that you'll torque the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and most of all, I hope I see you in the next one, because you're awesome.